It's been quite a day packed with a lot of learnings. We've learned about the insurance sector, learned about the justice system in the country, the way the money is flowing, and what is the money prediction for the coming future. But now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to turn towards a critical sector, a sector so very important that really holds the key to the future for any economy, and that is energy. We're going to look at the future of energy because few issues today are as important as this one. As countries balance energy security, sustainability, affordability, and innovation, the choices that are being made today will shape the decades ahead. So our next session, ladies and gentlemen, is very aptly titled The Energy Map: Oil, Atom, or Sun? Let's take a look. And what an honor it is to be inviting our esteemed panelists for the session. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as we have the honor of inviting onto the stage one of India's leading voices on economic transformation and innovation. Please welcome former G20 Sherpa, Mr. Amitabh Kant. Thank you, Mr. Kant. Thank you for joining us this evening. Please keep the applause going. As coming up next for the session on the stage is a leading voice in India's power sector, someone who brings deep expertise in energy transition, sustainability, and the future of electricity, CEO and MD of the Tata Power Company, Dr. Praveer Sinha. A very warm welcome to you, Dr. Sinha. Joining them on the panel is someone who comes with an extensive experience in the energy sector. She brings a valuable perspective on energy security, mobility, and sustainable growth as the chairperson of Shell Group of Companies in India and Senior VP of Shell Lubricants Asia Pacific, Ms. Mansi Madan Tripathy. And to steer this conversation ahead and draw the best out of each one of these panelists, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome a moderator for the session, Editor, Sustainability and Regulatory Affairs of Outlook Business, Mr. Sudipto Dey. A very warm welcome to all the distinguished panelists, and over to you, Mr. Dey.
Thank you very much. And thank you, the panelists, for being. I think it's a conversation which energy has been sort of in the earlier parts of the day. Energy security was discussed, touched upon, and it's something that I think all of us are looking forward to in terms of the roadmap for the India's energy mix. Without much ado, let me just start off with Mr. Kant. Mr. Kant, couple of months back, you wrote an article, a column, and you write very often, is that how India's energy independence, is become a new sovereignty issue. And it was widely reported, widely covered also. Tell me, how has the last 100 days of the war, the Iran war, how has it changed the whole India's energy map? Has it really changed it forever?
Very much, because India imports about 180 billion worth of fossil fuel. When prices go up very sharply and you have a war in your neighborhood in West Asia and the Strait of Hormuz gets closed, the prices shoot up from about $60 a barrel to about $110 a barrel. It has very severe implications on your macroeconomic security. It has implication on the strength of your currency, and it has huge long-term implications on your growth prospects. And therefore, energy independence is the key to India's long-term growth and prosperity. And My view has been very clear that, India has already done about 286 gigawatt of clean energy. India needs to accelerate the pace of that. We had set a target of 500 gigawatt by 2030. To my mind, that was set in the context of climate goals to be met. But we need to enhance this target in a very big way. My view is that in the context of the fact that this has severe implication in India's macroeconomic stability, but more than that the world in future will be driven by a new general purpose technology like AI, artificial intelligence, that India has already got about $70 billion worth of commitments for data centers. Another 90 billion worth of new data centers have been announced, so about $160 billion worth of data centers coming in, which need energy. If you're not able to have energy and you're not energy independent, you will not be able to drive artificial intelligence, you will not be able to drive artificial intelligence across different sectors of your economy. But more than that, you'll forever be dependent on fossil fuel. Exactly. Now, important thing is that India is climatically blessed. You have clean energy. You've done 286 gigawatt. If you enhance this target in a very big way and accelerate the pace, India has the capacity to produce large-scale renewable energy, crack water, and produce green hydrogen, and be the cheapest producer of green hydrogen, be the largest exporter of green hydrogen, and be the biggest manufacturer of electrolyzer. So I've been a long-term believer that India should push for a post-industrial society. India push for clean energy. We take great pride in the fact that last year we did 56 gigawatt of clean energy. China did 400 gigawatt of clean energy last year. So India should actually be aiming to do 500 gigawatt of clean energy, because India's climatic conditions are 5x better than China's climatic conditions. The only other country which can match India's climatic conditions is Saudi Arabia, which is full of fossil fuel. But India should actually be targeting 1,000 gigawatt per year of renewable clean energy, and that is my belief. But this would require a huge amount of focus on your ability to build evacuation structure, your ability to then build the base load of nuclear small modular reactors, nuclear energy. The Shanti bill has been passed already, but the rules have not come out as yet. So a range of things in terms of evacuation infrastructure, creating the bill for creating the rules for small modular reactor, and pushing private sectors like Tata Power, Shell, many other to create small modular reactors in India's necessary. We need to think big, we need to think large, and we need to make India totally energy independent for the future.
Absolutely. And in fact, if you look at it, Thomas Piketty, the French economist, in a very recent interaction with us, talked about how he's totally in favor of fast-tracking the whole energy transition. And the only qualification he made was that, it's not sufficient to go have renewables alone. It's very important to have caps on global north. There were reduced work hours, lifestyle changes. You see something of just going. There's a sort of if I can be the devil's advocate here, some of the critics mention that, are we sort of moving from one, say, choke point, which is oil, to another choke point where you have, say, one country dominating the whole ecosystem for critical minerals and other parts. So do you see that sort of where we move from one, we should not fall into a trap? How do you sort of react to that scenario?
No, I'm very clear that for a country like India, there is no trap, because if you have clean energy, don't fall in the trap of what the rest of the world is talking about, fossil fuel. Mm-hmm. You have climatic conditions, push for that. You have the ability, once you do renewable, you need battery storage. India today, clean energy, renewable energy is selling at 1 rupee in the daytime. It's selling at 10 rupees in the night time. Look at this. People who have built up pump storage are generating wealth because they're selling at 10 rupee at the peak hour. So you need to build up battery storage. That is important. You need every single tender has to be with 24 into 7 storage power in India. And our ambition to build more and more renewable has to be much higher than just 500 gigawatt. In the context of the present geopolitics, India must become a champion of clean energy. I'm absolutely clear. In India's growth, if your ambition is to grow at 9 to 10% per annum over a 3-decade period, and only 3 countries have been able to do it, Japan, Korea, China, only 3 countries have been able to do it. All 108 countries are caught in the middle income trap. This growth can only come from being energy independent. No other way. You can't be energy dependent on other parts of the world. You can't be energy dependent on the Strait of Hormuz and on West Asia any further. This is priority number 1 for India. And without this, India can never be a developed nation. You cannot be a Viksit Bharat, you cannot be a $30+ trillion economy without being energy independent.
Absolutely. Mr. Sinha, how has the last, this whole crisis, oil crisis, if I may put it, from a power sector perspective, how has it played out for you?
First of all, thank you for having me in the panel discussion. I think India has done quite well during the crisis that we had. As also in last 5 years, we had COVID, we had the conflict in Russia and Ukraine. And in each one of them, India has been able to meet its energy requirement. While globally, many countries have suffered, they had crisis of not enough gas or oil being there. We fortunately had enough in our own country. And we have, of course, our main generation is from coal and there's enough coal in the country. But also we have now huge amount of renewable power. So as was mentioned by Mr. Amitabh Kant, that during daytime we have huge excess capacity and the price of power, not only it goes down to 1 rupee, many times it goes down to nearly 0. So that's the benefit that we have. And what we need to do is that how do we make it more sustainable in terms of 24/7. It is infirm power and how do we make it firm? While battery storage is one of the solutions, pump storage is there, and we can have large number of pump storage because you already have nearly 50 gigawatt of hydropower plants. And if you create a pumping system in that, you can actually have nearly 5 times that capacity. And that's the benefit that we have as a country. And while we have come through this crisis, it is also important that we look at what will happen in next 5 years, 10 years or 20 years. And there is very good examples that we see in China. There are also good examples in other parts of the world. And if we plan ourselves little better, Mr. Amitabh Kant mentioned large and big. I think one of the other important thing is speed. Most of the time, we do many things, but it is too little, too slow. And that's where I think if we can increase our speed, there is one India that works. I always say that we have India in Delhi, and then we have the Bharat, which is in the states. And that is what is the problem, that every state has to think like India, and every state has to take ownership that they will be part of the big transformation or the energy transition that we are talking about. And while I strongly believe that whatever we have done is very little, it's just tip of the iceberg, and our capability is huge. And just to give some reference, in 2010, in the last decade, we would add typically about 10 to 12 gigawatt. Last year, we added 53 gigawatt. And I remember everyone used to be very doubtful. And most of it, mind you, has come from the private sector, that it would not be able to rise to the occasion, will not be able to do that. But we have been able to deliver, we have been able to add that capacity. And I don't think that it is too far that we will be able to add 100 gigawatt a year. So I think we have the capability, we have the knowledge. We need to put ourselves together We need many more Niti Ayogs. We need many more technology centers which can come and do a better planning. Mr. Khan mentioned that while we have set up huge capacity, there's huge capacity which has been set up, but we are not able to evacuate power. How do we do that?
Exactly.
How do we bring the distribution reforms? Out of the 28 states, only one state is in private sector, 27, and their condition is not very good. In fact, I always tell people that when I go to many states and I see the distribution system, my belief in God increases because wo Bhagwan hi chala rahe hain. It is in such bad condition. So I think there is so much that is there, and next 10, 15 years is a great time for India to really transition to clean energy and transition to cheap and affordable energy and make this country really energy security wise independent of anyone else, because I don't think sun or wind comes through any other strait or any other place. So we have straight access to that.
Absolutely. Mr. Bhatti, if I can turn to you, in a recent LinkedIn post, you spoke about the lessons in performance from a crisis, where you spoke about the lessons from a company perspective, from a leadership perspective, of these 100 days of this Iran war has sort of changed your perspective. Could you share some of those learnings, lessons?
No, I guess, again, a very good afternoon, everyone, and absolutely a pleasure to be on this panel. In fact, as I was reflecting on the name, it said, sun, oil, or atoms. It is like, it should be an and it should probably call molecules, electrons, atoms, and probably I'll add metal because, till the time the infrastructure below is not there. I honestly believe that, any crisis is a huge opportunity, and we saw it in various degrees. If you look at India, I think even in the last 100 days, I think the deliberation on how much of strategic reserve do we need to have in the country and the pace at which that conversation has been, and I've been part of a lot of those conversations, that has moved, would have not moved if not for the crisis, right? India diversifying from kind of like 21 countries where we were importing to now close to 42 plus, again, wouldn't have happened at the pace
Absolutely.
at which it has happened in the last 100 days, right? Which is extremely important. Like, I think if you think from a longer term perspective, some of the reforms, which we had been working with the government on, specifically renewable gas part of it, ethanol mix, pricing, all of them are moving at a very, very fast pace, and also on the upstream, the investment and what needs to be done there. So I think the pace part of has been really, really accelerated. Going, to one of my businesses, which is lubricants, typically a new formulation takes 6 to 9 months from the whole process, to get it tested, reformulated. We have been now doing it in matter of like 2 weeks, something which we could have never dreamt. Part of it is AI, because now we are doing some of those simulations at an AI level rather than physical, and hence the pace is accelerated. And part of it is also willingness of the entire ecosystem, our customers included, to experiment and move on, right? Like, instead of saying everything needs to be 100% perfect, it's like, okay, what molecules do I get to run my business today? And, anything and everything is co-mingling of base oils, having different mix was something which was completely unheard. Couple of, I would say months, it was like a holy cows you could not touch. But the crisis has then forced us to say, okay, if this is what we need as our demand and this is the supply, what are the 100 things which we can do to bridge the two? And I think that flexibility, resilience, agility wouldn't have come if not for crisis, So I think crisis is good in that way because it has accelerated and given us new ways of doing our business model, both at a country level and at a micro level as well.
Just to add to it, you see this crisis, sort of the lessons that you learned, picked up from this crisis, are they going to stay with you? How do you ensure that they stay with you going forward? It plays out. We get the maximum advantage of those.
Absolutely. I think that's something which is super critical because if I recall, there have been many of these crises earlier, but we deal with it and then we go back to our normal, right? But I guess, the key for us is like, and we have a couple of teams right now which are saying, longer term, what should be our supplier ecosystem so that we are diversified. Earlier we were relying on single supply sources because that gives us more scale and hence economy. And it's then a balance between, economy, but continuity of your business, which also becomes important. How we write our contracts is also a big learning for us, because currently contractually, if we have to do X, Y, Z without declaring a force majeure, you would be under a big financial penalty. But then, these crises help you to think through with your customers that what will be the right way so that it's a win-win, and writing our contracts very differently as we go forward. And then, obviously it goes down to how do we ensure that from an R&D slate and from our innovation pipeline, we are having that mindset, which is very different than before. So I guess hard coding it into our processes, hard coding it into our culture, hard coding it into our leadership expectation becomes really, really critical as we go forward. And I think that's a very important onus on all of us as individuals, as leaders, that we don't leave this crisis. Hopefully it ends soon. We're just saying business is normal and then move on. Yeah,
absolutely. Coming back to this whole debate about oil versus atom versus sun, in fact, there could be a plus instead of a versus. Mr. Kant, you referred to the nuclear part, and the fact that, do you think that atom now deserves a larger place in the whole energy mix as you look at the energy map going forward? And we have not invested enough in the nuclear.
So, India's ambition to do renewable energy at this size and scale will not be feasible without base load.
Mm-hmm.
And you need base load energy, and that can only come from nuclear. And the big nuclear projects, the record of India's performance on them has had very long gestation period.
Absolutely.
There has been time and cost overrun on these large projects.
Exactly.
So small modular reactors are the new technology. I've always been a believer that if India wants to grow rapidly, you have to get into cutting edge areas of technology. Without that, it's not possible. And small modular reactors, much like renewable energy, government has consciously taken a call to open it up to the private sector and not leave it as a monopoly of NPCIL and Department of Atomic Energy.
Yeah.
The Shanti Bill has been passed by the Parliament. It's a very, very progressive act. But the rules need to be notified immediately. There are several other constraints on fuel, etc., waste material, etc., which need to be sorted out and allow the private sector to move forward rapidly. And India needs to put a crack team to see that this is put forward and accelerated. The pace of that acceleration is very, very critical to my mind. There are two other points I want to make.
Sure.
And one is that given the huge amount of pollution in our urban cities, India needs to accelerate the pace of electric mobility. And I've been a long-term believer in this. And India should use the CAFE norms, which are pending for over 3.5 years, clearly come out unequivocally in favor of pushing for electric mobility, and say that in the next 3 years, at least the top 15 cities of India will go 100% electric on two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and we'll go 100% electric by 2030 on all trucks and on buses, and define the period by which India will go electric on even four-wheelers. We should clearly state that. Because a roadmap will then push private sector investment in that area. If you do not have a roadmap, it will be very difficult for the private sector to accelerate the pace of implementation. Why I'm saying that even for renewable energy, we should define our target as 1500, not 500 gigawatt, because one of India's biggest achievement on this 286 gigawatt has been that it's been done by the private sector of India. Exactly. It's not government built the policy, but the private sector has actually executed on ground, And they've been able to attract private equity, they've been able to attract venture funds from across the world. If you open it up and spell out a right roadmap, you'll be able to attract a lot of private equity and venture funds from across the world. And the third point I want to make is that it's very important to understand that we should not replace one kind of dependency, fossil fuel dependency and because you need battery storage, and move it to dependency on critical minerals. And it's important to understand this because the critical mineral processing technology has been monopolized by one country.
Exactly.
And that country, one country, what it does is that it increases the price of, it's not that critical minerals are not available. Critical minerals are all available in surplus. But the critical mineral processing technology has been monopolized. And what they do is they increase the price of of processed material, but they reduce the price of the end product. So you become then they reduce the price of the end product so sharply that you then become import dependent. Even if you develop the technology, it will be very difficult to match it in terms of pricing because they've reduced the price of the end product to rock bottom prices. So you need to then come out with clear policy measures that you are moving away to make in India, and we are going to support this policy for the next 5 or 6 years, that whoever produces batteries in India will be procured by India for the next 5 to 6 years to make India a champion in this. So these are 3 or 4 clear policy challenges which India faces, but it's as I said, it's very important that strategic independence. Strategic independence is dependent on energy independence. This is the key, and that is why this session of this conference is the most important session to my mind. You can't have strategic independence of India without energy independence. And that is, to my mind, the key to India's future growth.
Absolutely, absolutely. Dr. Sinha, like in terms of Tata Power, you've already 47% of your energy that you produce is green energy. What is the roadmap that you have for the energy transition for the company, for the group per se?
So, couple of points. One is that when we talk of energy transition, we need to find an alternative which is as good as what we have today, both in terms of quality as well as in terms of price and reliability. Today, in the energy transition, we have infirm power, and whether we bring battery storage or large pump storage, it is possible, and people always ask me that can we ever have 100%? And I tell them maybe not 100%, but maybe 90%. We can have 90% of our availability of power 24/7 through solar, wind, demand response, battery storage, pump storage. We can have pump storage which are operating 8 hours, 10 hours. And it's not that we have the same demand of power through the day. There are certain hours when you have less. And you can plan that in such a way through some of the smart grid technology intervention. So it is definitely possible. We are working on it. We are working with large number of industries. And we are also working with large number of state discoms that how we will transition. And this transition will happen between 2030 and 2035 and 2040. So it is not that we are talking something in 100 years later or something. This is real, this is here, and this is happening. And we can do this right across for everyone in the country. The second issue is when we talk of power supply, it's not only reliability, it's also resilience. And Mr. Amitabh Kant mentioned about nuclear. And again, on nuclear, there is a whole lot of work that is happening. I've personally been involved in it for last 2 years, and the government has to come up with the rules under which you can get the license and you can go ahead and implement these projects. Those are something which is work in progress. Again, speed is very important. If we have the right speed, we will be able to do. The third is, of course, the technology and the fuel and all that. Those have to be also handled. So I think looking at our track record of nuclear power, where in last 70 years, we have only been able to add about 8 gigawatt, and they say another 12 is under implementation. So if we have to look at 100 gigawatt or even more, then we need to do large number of private sector, and it has to be technology agnostic. It cannot be one technology that is met for all the requirements. And I think there's huge amount of work that is happening. There's also one aspect that Mr. Kant mentioned was about the how do we get the raw material for batteries. There's also a lot of work that is happening on alternate chemistries. So lithium is not the be all and end all. There are technologies which are flow batteries, there are technologies which are sodium batteries, manganese batteries, and these are in quite advanced stage. I would say that in next 3 years at least, 3 to 5 years, we'll have huge number of alternates, and they would be for different applications. For mobility, it will have a different type of battery. For the stationary application, and especially for power and renewable, it will be. So I think there is whole lot of work that is happening. I don't know whether this is the most important session, but I can tell you that globally, the amount of work that is happening on clean energy space, that sort of thing I have not seen in last 100 years, that sort of thing happening. Globally, you go to any university, any science place, there's huge amount of research work that is happening. Thousands and thousands of PhDs are working on it to find new solutions. And I'm sure we will crack this. The reality will be maybe in 2040 or 2050, you will have, each hotel will have a small nuclear plant in their basement, and we would not know about it. Or each factory will have, or each commercial complex. So this will become a reality. A lot of work is happening. I think we need to do much faster many of the things in our country, and we will have energy independence.
Absolutely. Mr. Bharti, we were discussing earlier the role of transition fuels like natural gas and LNG. You see a role for them as India, as the energy transition mix, the whole energy mix plays out?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think when we look at, India's energy mix and juxtapose it with the other part of the world, the developed world, right? The two things become very, very important. One, the role of natural gas in the mix, right? So typically, we are still talking 6% for last many years. In its maturity, we are still talking 15%. But if you look at, say, let me pick up UK. Currently, 30% of their mix today is by gas, right? And then talking about scale, like so nuclear, even if it's maturity in 47, we are still talking 100 gigawatts, which from a percentage perspective would still be, 3 to 4% of our energy mix, even in its maturity.
Absolutely.
Right? So that then boils down to what are the credible sources to be really, really going through the energy transition. And, if we have to go down from 42% of coal to say a going state of 18 to 20% in 2060 or so, the most credible is still gas, which has been proven in terms of its application right from heavy industry to, heavy trucks. Electricity is still not that proven, but, the LNG usage in the heavy industry is already proven. So I think one of the other key factors is how do we really ensure that the overall infrastructure, the commercial value chain in India is also totally equipped so that we are able to leverage something which is already proven and move that much faster, because ultimately what will work in India is two things in my mind. One, the final cost to the end consumer has to be in that 5 rupees range. Till the time the energy mix, whatever we produce is not there, it will not take, right? So that's one. And second is scale. How much scale can we get that? So I think for those two conditions to be true, it's really important that as a country, we also focus on something which we feel is a credible pathway for our energy transition as we go forward. Yeah.
Let me come to the interesting, the financing of the whole energy transition play. Mr. Kant, it's estimated around $500 billion of energy transition. That's the investment needed for the whole energy transition play to play out in Indian context. Are we sort of, what sort of role do you see for different institutions, different players in this, in terms of how do we get the funds? $500 billion.
There's no shortage of money in the world, let me tell you this. There's almost, if you look at the total amount of liquidity available right now, there's almost about 40 trillion dollar available for the energy sector alone from across the world. Sovereign wealth funds are full of funds. Pension funds are full of funds. Private equity is full of funds. You need a clear roadmap in some of these sectors. You need a clear roadmap for renewable and define that you'll do it year by year in this manner. You can't be doing 8 gigawatt one year, 10 gigawatt another year, and 56 gigawatt in the third year. If you say that I'm going to crack 400 gigawatt or 500 gigawatt every year, the privates lay down the clear policy measures, say that I'll build the evacuation for that. The private sector will attract private equity and venture fund. If you say that, but look at you've put out tenders for green hydrogen. Price of green hydrogen in India came down from $4.50 to close to about $3 per kilogram. Your target is that you should be able to bring down the target of green hydrogen to $1 per kilogram. That means that you need to put out tenders for steel, for cement, for fertilizer, all this for green hydrogen. These tenders have not yet come out. Actually, the steel ministry should take the lead and say, because if you don't do this, tomorrow you will not be able to export your steel to Europe. You don't do this to fertilizer, you will not be able to push clean fertilizer. So each one of these ministries should be tasked to put out tenders for green hydrogen. That's how. Only the oil companies have done it. And my appreciation for Ministry of Petroleum for pushing them into this direction. But all other ministries should take the lead and say that India will take the lead to bring down the green hydrogen to $1 per kilogram. And that means that your renewable targets will go up. That means that your green hydrogen will go up. You define the roadmap and you say that our challenge is we'll bring it down to $1 per kilogram. Think of size, scale, and execution. Exactly. That is the key for India. You push India into that direction. And India, if you do that, private sector from all over the world will come and put money into India.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's no shortage of money. There's a shortage of vision. There's a shortage of execution.
Dr. Sinha, your take.
So the last calendar year, and I'm talking about 1 year, nearly 2.1 trillion was spent globally in a clean energy space, which of course included mobility. In power sector, it was about 800 billion. Majority of it, of course, was from China. India spent 159 billion. So it's not that we have a challenge of spending money. It's a question of, as Mr. Amitabh Kant mentioned, that you create the right ecosystem of regulatory right ecosystem, policy right ecosystem, land ecosystem, power evacuation. So I think you create the right ecosystem, it will happen. Today, globally, all the sovereign funds are in clean energy. In fact, there's something known as FOMO. So no one wants to miss out the experience of being in India in the clean energy. So I think money will not be a problem. We'll, of course, have to go globally and get that sort of money. But if we have the right projects, if there is a demand, and if we can create the right ecosystem, we'll be able to implement it.
Yeah, I'll just quickly add on.
Please.
I'm conscious of time. I think I'll break it down into final commercials, which is on IRR, right? Most of the projects need to cross that 15% hurdle. Now, in India, where we see the maximum challenge is one, when you convert it into the FX to the dollar, because that's where the global money will be getting allocated. We lose about 3 to 4% there, right? Net of import and export on that one. So equalizing that would be very critical. Second, I think the last mile connectivity, which loses on, where the money, there are some value leakages in the value chain. Just small plugs there will help the overall economics overall. Yeah? And third, but not the least, is then the demand and the policy part of it, so that the demand is very clear for people to say, okay, how much of CapEx can I invest today? Because doing it in drips is not good for the overall project economics.
Absolutely.
So I think just breaking down into few of those fundamentals of any good project economics, will get India trillions of dollars, because as, Mr. Amitabh Kant said, there is no dearth of money. There's just dearth of good projects which can give you good IRR. And India can absolutely get there by small changes and tweaks, which I just talked about. Yeah.
Final round, and Mr. Kant, you referred to it earlier. Do you see at some point of time India becoming an exporter of clean energy solutions?
Well, my vision is that India should really push for a post-industrial society where don't get caught into this world of fossil fuel. India should really become a champion. No other country in the world has the climatic condition which India has. No other country has been able to crack this scale of renewable energy. And no other country has the potential to bring down the cost of green hydrogen to $1 per kilogram and become the biggest exporter. So India should be absolutely clear and steadfast in its vision that by 2030, it will bring down the cost of green hydrogen to $1 per kilogram, and it will become the largest exporter of clean energy to the rest of the world.
Absolutely. Dr. Sinha, your take?
Yeah, I think India is blessed to that extent because we have naturally both sun and wind. And it's in large parts of India. It's not just restricted to few areas. So at least, if not to very many places in Europe, but at least in neighboring countries, we can do. Today, you have subsea transmission cables which are there. So it's definitely, it is feasible. The art of possible is something that we have to make it happen.
Absolutely.
I don't think there's a question of will it? It's just a question of when.
Okay.
And I think that when is totally dependent on the will. So I think we are saying the same thing, but I guess we'll just have to come together and push it through.
Absolutely. I'd like to open because as you mentioned, this is one of the most important. Can we have one question from the audience? Do we have the time for that?
If you promise us just one, there's positive time. Yeah.
So maybe one question from the audience. As Mr. Kant said, it's one of the most important sessions of the event. So if you can have one question for the audience. Anybody?
We have somewhere right in the middle, here in the center of the room. Can you make the mic reach her?
Hi guys, big fan of the points you've put across. I just had one very interesting question actually about electrolyzers and hydrogen, as you guys mentioned, which is, and I may be wrong, but a very big part of electrolyzers is going to be catalysts and electrode supports. So a lot of that comes from nickel. And like you correctly said, China controls a lot of the nickel supply. And if we have to bring it down to $1 per kg, what are maybe some solutions we can do to reduce reliance on nickel, or find a way to collect and gain a greater supply or greater, supply resilience to this control of nickel that China has? Thank you.
Mr. Khan?
Let me tell you that nickel, cobalt, lithium, every single critical mineral is available in the world. There's no shortage of mineral. What is missing is the processing technology. India must master. What has happened in the last 2 decades is China has mastered the processing technology of critical minerals. Rest of the world hasn't done it. Europe hasn't done it. America hasn't done it. Asia hasn't done it. And that is why we've made ourselves dependent on China. What we need to do is to master the processing technology. Availability is not a challenge.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks for I'd like to thank all the panel members. And we could have gone on, but of course, we have a new panel coming up. And thank you, Mr. Kant. Thank you, Dr. Sinha. And thank you, Mr. Patil.
A big thank you to all the panelists and Mr. Dey for bringing the best out of this discussion. Can we please request you to get together for a group photograph? Mr. Amitabh Kant, Dr. Praveer Sinha and Ms. Mansi Madan Tripathy, along with Mr. Dey, sharing some really insightful perspectives. And as Mr. Kant rightly said, that it's energy dependence that will decide the strategic independence and therefore will be a key to the future of the country. At this point, I would like to request Mr. Atul Raheja to please join us on stage to kindly present our speakers with a small token of appreciation from our side. Thank you all once again, and thank you so much, Mr. Raheja, for doing the honors.